I'm Carl Sahlberg, owner of Creative Reproductions of Scale, and this video is part D of Cir-kit Concepts components. In our last video, we attached 3 different connectors to different ceiling lights or wall sconces: the chandelier adapter, the ceiling canopy, and the plug-in ceiling plate. Today we will show how to install the plug-in portions or the sockets of each adapter into the ceiling of our dollhouse. So again, let's go to the workbench where I can show you some of the tools that we'll need and what we're going to be doing when we do get to the dollhouse. Let's go through some of the tools that we're going to be needing. The first one that I think is really the most important is the gauge. We've gone through this a couple of times in the other videos, but this does have the whole configurations for the different components that Cir-kit has, as well as miniature house. We're going to need that to position the micro jacks or the other components that go into the dollhouse properly in the right location on the ceilings. So that is a definite. But I'll show you some alternatives to this. If you don't have the gauge, you certainly can use 12-volt probe tester, either Cir-kits or the one that I have, which are basically the same thing. They just have the metal prongs on the end here. You stab them into the tape wire, and if you have electricity, it shows you that the light comes on and it shows you that you have electricity passing through the tape. But it also is the exact same dimension as the ceiling adapters. And you can see that it fits right into the whole configuration on our gauge that's right here. So you can use either one of these for marking where the pins go into the flat tape wire. For the ceiling canopy, you'll have to either use the pins that are on the adapter that goes into the ceiling, or you can use the gauge on here, and that's the end one that's over here. You can see that it lines up perfectly with the holes that are in there. Another tool that you're going to need is the awl, and this has a pin in the end here, which you can buy them from Cir-kit. It's CK1044-1 is the pins that go with the awl. But I also found that if you don't have those pins to go in here, a long hat pin has about the same diameter as what that brad is that's in there. And what you need is to have it so that it is the same size as the insert on the hole on the micro jack or the eyelets that Cir-kit has. So you want it to be able to go into the center of that when you're pushing this into the ceiling. If that doesn't work, if you have some of the small T-pins, they also work. And what I do is I just cut off the head of that thing and then screw it into the awl. That'll take care of the connections that are on there. You're also going to need your Dremel. And I've had a lot of people ask where this thing comes from. It is a Dremel, but it's not made anymore. It's their Silhouette version. This is one of my favorite tools simply because it's so small and it's easy to handle in the dollhouse. And this is about giving out on me, so I hate to see it when it does. Do need a Dremel. This is another one that I have as a Proxxon, which I really like. You also can use one of these hand units for the drill. That works perfectly good. And we showed you the little finger drills, which are available through Micromart. I have a full set of these, and they work very, very well in small places. And we'll be doing some other videos where we definitely use this over the Dremel because we just don't have enough space to use the the Dremel in there. Another couple things that we need is a level or a square and a straight edge. And of course, a hammer comes in very, very handy. I want to also show you preparation that we need to do on the micro jacks with a tail that we'll use a little bit later. So let's go ahead and grab one. I've got a whole jar full of them, but they're so doggone small, it's going to be hard for you to see exactly what I'm doing. The difference on the micro jacks with a tail is that there's a section down here that I can wrap a wire on so that I can put this into the ceiling of the dollhouse and run my wires up to the floor up above and make a connection so that I have a permanent hard wire connection rather than going through the tape wire. What we need to do is, in preparation for putting it into the dollhouse, is we need to make up a series of these, one red and one black leads on the tails for the number of light fixtures that we're going to be putting into the ceiling, or I like to put at least one of these set of jacks in each room in case you want to put a chandelier in at a later date. I just need to take a piece of our Kynar wire. I'll strip the end of it to about 3/4 of an inch that's on there, and then I can hold that part of the wire right between my fingers and then wrap the wire around. I'll push the little bit of tail that I was holding on the front edge there back onto the tail end and then roll it in my fingers. And you can possibly see that I've got it rolled exactly onto the small tail that's on the micro jack. I then will set it down on the table here, and we need to solder that. So I'll take my solder here, bring our iron up. I'm going to put a little bit of solder on the tip of the iron, and then I'm going to go underneath the point or the tail of that micro jack and apply a little bit of solder on top of the tail, and it just flows over the wires that are on there, and we get a nice micro jack with the wire coming off of there. So we need to make up a full set. So we need one red, we need another black one for each light that we're going to be wiring into the ceiling of the dollhouse. So now we have those made and are ready for what we're going to do. Let's go ahead and change and start with the easiest ones first. I'm going to show you on the board here what we need to do. Then we'll go to the dollhouse and I'll show you where I have already done it in the dollhouse. We're looking basically at the ceiling of one of the rooms, and we have run the flat tape wire across to a section where we're going to be putting the ceiling light in. And for the ceiling canopy, which is the white one that's here, and let me show you, this is the end that we already wired on our chandelier, and it has the two screws that are on the inside. It's going to go into this collar or this neck piece and screw or twist on, and will be held into the ceiling. All we need to do is to put this component into our flat tape, and it is probably the easiest one for us to do, because just take the wires or the pins that are in here, line it up so that it touches both of the copper strips, the red and the black. Line it up so that it touches both of those, and then we can just set it down here and push it into the ceiling. Now, if you're like me and it's tough to do, I like to use a block of wood, and just set it on the top of here, and then we can take our hammer and hammer it. Whoop, not quite. There we go. Put the hammer on there and hammer it down flush. I also recommend a little bit of glue on there. I want to pull this off later. But if it was in the dollhouse, I would like to put a piece of glue on there. But note that it's gluing to the mylar on the tape. It's not gluing to the wood. But it does give additional adherence and makes it stick a lot better. Once you have that in, you can come back with your chandelier and put it in there and twist it, and then it's good and tight, and it will work. We'll show you that when we get to the dollhouse. To take it out, we just twist it the opposite direction and pull it off. That way we can take the chandelier, as we explained before, we can take the chandelier. If we need to change the bulbs in here, we can unscrew the glass globe and be able to get to the light bulb quite easily, rather than having to fight it in the dollhouse, which is why we're going ahead and showing you how to put in all of these connectors that are in there. The second one that we need to do, or the other way we could do that, so I can come back and I can take our gauge and I can line that up so that it goes directly into the two strips on there, and then make my pinholes with the map pin, and it lines it up so that we can then put the pins of our adapter in there and push it into the flat tape. For putting the chandelier adapters in, which is the one that we did on this schoolhouse lamp that goes in there, we have just these little pins here, and that's the connection at this end of the gauge. We can line that up onto the flat tape, or we can use the 12-volt tester, which is the same dimensions that are on here, line it up so that it does touch the two areas on the flat tape, go down here and make our mark. And I think we have shown you this before, but I like to come back and use the center punch on Bam Bam to just make it a little bit bigger of a hole that the drill's going to find. And then I can come back with our Dremel or our drill, whichever one we choose to use. That's a number 55 drill that's in here. And I can go ahead and I can drill. Then we can come back with our awl and take one of the micro jacks without a tail, put it on the nail that's on the end here. Oops. Put the micro jack in there, and then line it up with the hole and just push it down. Grab a second micro jack, yeah, this one didn't get quite down far enough. And there you have the two micro jacks, or the pins, that are in here. As you can see, they don't take up much space. They're very easy to conceal, so I tend to put those in a lot of the rooms of the dollhouse. Even if I don't have plans for putting a light in immediately, I'll put them in several locations that I may want to put one in later on when I buy the right lamp. But then our ceiling light fixture will actually go into those pins that are on here. Now let's change the situation, and let's look at our ceiling without any flat tape wire as to what we need to do. Here I'm going to use the gauge, and I want to put a light fixture right into the center. Now we can take our tape measure, we can measure where that area is, but this is the ceiling now in the dollhouse. And I'm going to use my pins. Put the marks in here. We'll come back with Bam Bam. I'll make it so that it's a little bit stronger of a mark. We'll come back with the drill, again a number 55 drill. You can also use a 1/16, but it's a little bit larger, and the 55 actually works the best. And then I'm going to drill all the way through the board. So that's going to drill and go up to the floor up above. At that point, after I've drilled that, that's marked the location. I'm going to turn the board over. This is now our floor. Here's the holes you can see that we've come through on. This is flat tape that we ran on the floor that's giving me the 12 volts that I need to connect to the wires that are on here. And I'm going to show you a couple little tricks that I like to do. Before I'm going to put the micro jacks with a tail and the wire coming up this way on the ceiling side, I want to take my Dremel, and I have a grinding bit that's on here, and I'm going to grind across those two holes that were in here. And I'm going to put a line on here. One thing that we can do is we could run that pencil line all the way over here to the tape wire, and I can make a channel so that the wires would lay into the channel and then connect to our two copper strips on our flat tape to give us the electrical connection that we want. That is one option. There is another option that I'm going to show you, and if I had put the holes parallel to this tape run, we could have run another piece of tape straight up here instead of having the channel that's in there. But I'm going to show you what I'm trying to do. So I'm going to turn on the drill. I was just trying to smooth the edges a little bit. What I like to do then is to take a piece of our flat tape and run it across that little cutout that we just did on here. Let it go down into it. Smooth it out going across there. Then I'll come back with our drill from the other side, and it's easier to just pick this up. And I want to go through the tape. So I put the hole that we did from the ceiling on the dollhouse is coming up to the floor up above. We've put the little indentation in here. Now I can put my micro jacks with a wire on the other side. So let's go look at the ceiling side again. We'll swing this around. And I'll take a black one and a red one. And we'll set the wire through the hole. I'll go ahead and use this one. put it into the micro jack and then push that down into the hole. Take the black one, now I'm pushing it down to where it's almost flush to the top. If you want to go a little bit more, we can use our hammer to get that down nice and tight. I'll flip it back again to where we go to the floor on here. And if you notice, the red came out on the red side of the tape. The black came out on the black side of the tape. All I need to do is to solder into that trough that's on here. And I'm going to use my soldering iron to melt a little bit of that mylar coating that's on here, and to clean the coating that's on the Kynar wire. We'll do the same thing over here. Then I'll lay them opposite directions and just make a little puddle of solder down there. If it doesn't flow, it's because I didn't get the mylar coating off completely well. But you can coat that, play with it a little bit. It's hot enough that it's melting all of that as we do it. So we can get a nice solder joint on the two wires. Take our cutters, cut that off. And now we have the two micro jacks that are on this side. We didn't use any tape, so you can have a nice clean white ceiling that just has these very, very small micro jacks in the ceiling, but they're ended up being wired on this side. So you'll see when we go to the Dollhouse that I did it a little bit differently, where I was able to run a perpendicular piece across this way, and my holes were parallel to the tape that was on here, which made a real nice run and situation for us on the Dollhouse. If you want to put the ceiling canopy piece in, it works basically the same way, but we don't need to have the micro jacks. I'm just going to place this in the ceiling, push it down enough to give me the pin marks that are on there, or use the gauge so that we can put the marks exactly where we want them. We can orientate this so we're perpendicular to the run that we want to have on the thing. Once we have those marked, again, I'm going to use Bam Bam with the center punch so I can make the indentation so the drill finds it. I then am going to drill the hole again through here, but that is a different dimension than the ceiling canopy, or rather than the chandelier adapter. These are narrower than this one is. But because we have the bigger pins on here, or the nails that are on the bottom of here, I can actually run our bare wires from the bottom, or this would be the floor up above, and fold it over on there. And take our black one, fold it over, and then we can take our pin, line it up on those holes, push that in, and cut the little excess wire that's on there. And again, I would try and glue those that's in there. But that's good and tight. And then on this side, we do the same thing that we did here, where we could have put a groove in there and then soldered to the flat tape, or we can bring this over to the here and put the red to the red, the black to the black. Now let's go to the Dollhouse, and we'll show you exactly what we've been able to do at the Dollhouse. Having moved the Dollhouse, I can now show you different ways to wire the plug-in or the outlet side of Cir-kit Concepts components into the Dollhouse. In our last video, we attached 3 different connectors to the light fixtures themselves. We have the ceiling canopy adapter. This is the one that goes into the ceiling and twists to lock in. We have the chandelier adapter, which has the 2 little pins that are in the top, and we glued the collar on the top of the lamp itself. And then we have the ceiling plate adapter, which is the one that I put onto this lamp that goes to my Dollhouse of my hardware store. Now we need to attach our plug-in feature into the Dollhouse itself. The most common way to attach a lamp into the Dollhouse, though, is to take the chandelier that you want to put in there. We'd probably measure halfway into the center of the room itself, and we'd put the lamp approximately there. We would take and drill a hole straight through the ceiling into the floor up above, take the wire from here, and on this one, as on the other lamps that I've worked with, I recommend that we take the foam tape off of the top, feed that wire through the side of this cowling, and make it come out of the very center of the outlet itself, or the fixture itself. And then we can insert that wire to the hole that we drilled into the center of the room and glue this to the center of the room, and we've got our light in place. And then we'll do our wiring from the cord to the floor above, and that's what most of us do. It's by far the easiest. It's the least expensive way because you're not buying these components. Second floor of the Dollhouse, we have our flat tape that we've put in here and doing some of the wiring in previous videos that we have. The first floor, you'll notice, doesn't have any of the flat tape, and yet we still have our light that we plugged in down here, and we have 2 ceiling lamps that are in there. But for those that are purists and they want the walls perfectly flat, you may be wanting to paint them, you don't want the flat tape to be showing. So I'm going to show you 2 different ways of wiring each of these in, but we'll start with the simplest one. I'm going to take the one lamp that is a little bit different than the rest, and that's our ceiling canopy. With the ceiling canopy, all we have is this little insert that goes into the ceiling. And by far the easiest way to do this is to go ahead and run our flat tape. I have flat tape that's powering the sidewall here from the floor, but we can run a strip up the wall and then across the ceiling. That tape will allow us to make a connection into a live circuit so that we can later plug in the lamp and it all will work. Let me close into the top there, and you can see where it comes up the wall, and then we're going across the ceiling, and we have the orange cap, and all that you need to do is to take the nails or the pins that are in the adapter itself, line it up so that it covers the 2 conductors of the flat tape wire, push that directly into the ceiling, or take a small hammer and hammer it in place. I also recommend putting a little bit of glue on that before you do that. And then we can take our fixture we already wired and just put it in here and turn it. And if I turn off the LEDs that are in there and back up a little bit on our camera, and you can see that we have our light working in their ceiling. The other two fixtures actually have the exact same connector that's on there, so we only have to do one other type of operation. And I would take our gauge that we have, line it up on that flat tape. Let me unplug that lamp there. And we can take the whole configuration that's on the end of this, and we can go ahead and mark where the two micro jacks or the spring-loaded eyelets need to be placed on the flat tape. And then we're going to take our awl with the spring-loaded eyelet on here, but first we need to drill a pilot hole in there, and we're going to use a number 55 drill bit in there. Where we mark the tape, we can go in here and we can go ahead and drill the holes in there, come back with our awl with the spring-loaded eyelet, find those hole positions and just push the eyelets directly in. And then if I go ahead and zoom back in a little bit, we can take the lamp that I have here that I did previously, and we can plug it in to the micro jacks that we just put into the flat tape. That's the easiest way, and that's the way that Cir-kit recommends doing it. But there is another alternative for connecting those in, and that's by drilling a hole to the floor up above. Okay, let's go down to the first floor, showing you the ceiling. I've already marked the ceiling where we want to have the ceiling fixture to go. I've marked it then with our gauge so that I have the correct pinhole distances marked on the ceiling. And then I'm going to go through with my drill that I have on here, and we're going to drill a hole all the way up to the floor up above. And we'll do both of those holes. Wherever the other one is. And before we put the spring-loaded eyelets into those holes, we're going to go up to the floor up above, and where the two holes came through here, I like to take my Dremel with a grinding bit on it, and I can grind a little bit of a valley across those two holes that we put in here. Then I'll come back with my tape and we'll run it straight this way. Now this strip that's on the floor is a live strip, so that I can just put my grommets red to red, black to black. That will power the strip over to the little valley that we put in there. Then I can take my drill again and come up from the bottom so that I can go through the flat tape. And you can see that we came right into the center of that red side. Do the same thing on this one. Now we can take the micro jacks with a tail and put the bare wire coming up through here, lay it on either side of the tape, and then solder directly to that. And that'll make those micro jacks live that we can turn around and just plug in our outlet or our lamp that we previously wired. The difference between that on the ceiling adapters and the ceiling plate adapter, which both use the micro jacks or the spring-loaded eyelets, and the other ceiling adapter, the ceiling canopy adapter, which has a different configuration. It also has a much bigger pin. I'm going to go ahead and just screw this into the light fixture so you can see the pin that's on here. What I do when I have this one is I don't need to use the micro jacks. The micro jacks are too small for those nails to fit into, but I can come down then with a bare wire, lay it across the ceiling and push this up and glue that cap into the ceiling on there, and then lay my wires across the valley that we routed out here and solder them down into place. So those are the two different ways that we can do it. That way, we never had any flat tape on the first floor. We did all of our wiring to the floor up above. And I'll end by saying it takes a little bit more time to do it and to finish it off. But if you have some patience and good lighting, it isn't that difficult to do. I want to show you one other thing on the light that I have mounted on the first floor ceiling on there. I did exactly the same thing as I said we would do. I dug out a little bit of a channel, and then I did my soldering to the flat tape that's on here. Then I filled the hole with drywall compound, came back and did a light sanding, and you can see that it's perfectly flush onto the ceiling, or onto the floor there. So we can put our flooring boards directly over this thing without any hump being in the middle. And the reason I like solder or bringing my wires up to the floor is because it's real easy to conceal the wiring that's on the floor, much more so than where we've run around on the walls or trying to come up the ceiling on there. It definitely shows that's on there. So I tend not to try and run my wire or my flat tape directly onto the ceiling as we did on this one. You can see we came all the way up and then over to the light that's on here. And if I turn off the LEDs that are in the room, you can probably see the outlets that I stuck in there a little bit easier.